You want a couple Joe's O's?
Couple of what?
Joe's O's.
No, thank you. You're welcome to go buy me a Coke. Four people here. Wow.
5? Ryan?
Oh, 5. Ryan's here too. I was saying we could go off looking for sodas, but we can't go off looking for sodas. Because Ryan,
I'm taking
we would lose Ryan.
No, we wouldn't.
We don't want to lose Ryan.
Oh. Not on the phone.
We don't want to lose Ryan. It was an easier campus to find a good soda.
Vending machine alone?
What?
This vending machine let me do.
The vending machine. Does it have Coke?
I would know, there's a 50% there.
No, it doesn't have Coke.
You know this.
Yeah, this is the Pepsi campus. So if any of the machines still have Pepsis left, which is doubtful, they probably have Pepsis. Now, if it was sugar, then the Pepsi would be fine. But it's corn syrup. So if it's corn syrup, then you gotta get Coke. Coke with corn syrup is okay. Pepsi with corn syrup tastes like myself.
I don't drink Coke.
Well, that's the better solution, is to not drink the soda.
I do like Sprite.
You like what?
Like Sprite's really good. Colas, I
Sprite?
should do Colas.
Sprite's all right. Sprite's good if you mix, in the DC, if you mix Sierra Mist and like cranberry juice,
Oh,
that's really good. Gatorade Sierra Mist, that would work too. Yeah, Sierra Mist, especially with Spring Arbor water, is really hard. So if you mix it with some kind of flavoring, it's good to go.
I usually mix the milk with ice.
Mix milk with ice,
Yeah.
ice milk. That'll work.
The milk's never cold.
That'll work.
You gotta drink it fast enough.
I missed having Banta milk on Wednesday.
What?
Banta milk. Star Wars. The blue milk. Blue milk from Star Wars, the green milk. Good stuff. Ryan thinks I'm looking at him. No, I'm looking at my email. Sorry, Ryan, if I freaked you out there by coming in a little too close. All right, this might be all that we end up having, I think. We were waiting. I was waiting. I'm like, all right, I know as soon as I begin, Aaron's gonna walk in. So why not just wait until Aaron shows up? Now we can officially begin class. So we have two things to do today, a little bit on discussing the Obama presidency, and you feel free to share your controversial question with Aaron and Ryan, and then we'll talk about the final exam. So go to it. Group of 4, group of 3 here. Obama presidency, good or bad? What?
Good or bad, yes.
You just.
All right. So you're like, give me a break.
Let's just get through this.
Raining man.
I thought that he had a lot of good, but he had some bad, but I think mostly with like I think he did a really good job with like handling ISIS and like the recession that happened in 2008. I think he did a really good job coming out of that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna share it on my own feed too. Yeah, you should give it a like. It says Aaron embodies literally the coolest person who's ever existed. Uh-huh.
I wasn't, so there's still claim that most Americans were surprised when Obama was elected.
The truth in this thing. Sorry, what did you say? Somebody come to the truth in this thing.
Wants to undo everything Obama's ever thought about in his life.
Yeah, I think,
I wasn't that surprised when Obama was elected.
I mean, I was only 8, so.
I guess I was just born.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when I was like 8 years old to whatever, 12, 16,
Yeah.
whatever, a lot of my views kind of came from like what my parents thought. So I kind of just repeated that out. But now that I like think for myself more, I almost don't know if I have the like,
Aaron, this is a Christian university, you should know.
true. Let me get a verse.
Wow.
Let me get a verse to support what
Right.
I. Anyway, yeah, that's my 2
We
cents.
don't need to spend a terrible amount of time on this, but I think it's good to, whether you read chapter 10 of Gerstle already, which of course certain pieces of Obama presidency, or you just lived through it. And so, not that you were all astute observers of Obama presidency, you were probably too young, but you listen to your parents or your grandparents complain about it. What are your thoughts? Obama, a good president? And I realize that, trying to evaluate any president as good or bad is kind of tricky. It's like, well,
Right.
what are we going to evaluate them?
Compared to what?
What's the criteria?
Yeah.
I would say, I don't think I would say good or bad, but I think from the book, I've learned, like, I appreciate his presidency more than I think I did before, just as like the book showed like truly how difficult it is to be like a president. And I think like we talked about in class, like if you're Christian, you vote Republican. And so I think like I never really even like, thought about Obama like presidency. So like, he's not Republican, so therefore I don't care. But I think the book, like I learned to appreciate him a lot.
I like how he like did his best to not make the United States like a theocracy, and a lot of people hated that. Because I think like running the government, you should respect like everyone's beliefs and not just try to force the idea of like this is a Christian nation.
Yeah.
I think he did good at that, and like a lot of people took that as him like being Satan, but I think he did it from a good place actually.
Yeah, I mean, the opening slide of the PowerPoint for lecture 12, where somebody holding up a sign, speak for yourself, Obama, we are a Christian nation, right? Because he had made a comment in speech, I forget regarding what, but he had said, we're not we're not a Christian nation, or you said we're not. I forget exactly what the wording was, but of course, from a legal standpoint, like, we've never been a Christian nation.
Yeah.
Right? The US Constitution has no religious tests for office, and so. I mean, we've had a Christian culture, which of course then shaped expectations of the presidency of being Christian, but the reality is that we've never, in a legal sense, been. In a legal sense, we've never been a Christian. Nevertheless, one that set people off against him, and this was part of that. He's the secret Muslim. He's a secret Muslim who's going to destroy.
Yeah, and like to an extent, I understand why it does upset people, because I really do think it is respectable. Like, if you're a Christian and you think that everyone should be, then I think you're a good Christian, because that means you truly believe that like Jesus is the way and you want everyone to be safe. So like, I can understand why it would upset you at first to someone not wanting that to be the basis for your government, because ideally, if you're a Christian, you would want it to be the basis for your government, the basis in schools, the basis in family. And like, that would just be awesome, because then everyone would have Jesus and your religion would be great. But at the end of the day, though, like, it isn't the only religion that exists. And if it were somehow flipped and like Islam became like the theocracy of the nation, then everyone would be absolutely livid. So like, it's important to have that freedom and not just base it on a single one, so that people who are Christian can freely practice it, instead of feeling like everyone has to be indoctrinated in because we are a Christian nation. Like, it actually, I think, even could strengthen it by just allowing it be a neutral, like, freedom to practice.
Yeah, which you could argue that the framers kind of intended some kind of, we're going to be a Christian nation. Most of the founders of the Constitution were Christians,
But I don't think they were, though, right?
but not necessarily. What's that?
They weren't Christian, though, right? Weren't a lot of them atheists?
No, I mean,
Wasn't like Ben
a few
Franklin?
were called atheists, but atheist in that context just meant that didn't have any like definite concepts about God. I mean, there were not really any kind of true atheists. Most of the founding fathers were church-going Christians. Anglican church, they wouldn't like Spring Harbor Chapel too much.
No, Brian Kona.
But that didn't mean that they expected everybody in the nation to be Christian. They imagined it as broad religious toleration. Sorry.
I would rate him about like a 60% only because like he didn't do anything bad. Like he didn't like make like any like really do anything bad. It's just like he said he'd do all these things and then he didn't end up doing them. And like even in the book it said like at the end of his presidency, when he was saying all these things, he kind of just sat there and didn't. But I also have respect for him continuing what he was trying to do and staying true to himself and like his beliefs after the nation kind of like demonized him and like came up with all these rumors out of his butts, honestly, to like create something it wasn't. Even like people in like Congress and people like, I think that it was important because even like through that, he still wasn't a bad person. And he definitely was like the most well-spoken president in our nation. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to, evaluate presidents, like I teach this government class, and the one article that we read that sociologist says there's like 6 characteristics that make for a president. Rarely does a president score high in all those blocks, right? On issues that deal probably more with maybe style or personality, maybe even image. Obama likes pretty. I think what Ursula really focuses on, and it makes sense that Ursula would focus on this. This whole book has been the struggle between competing conceptions of the nation. Right? It's more expansion, of civic nationalism, and a more narrow racial nationalism. It makes sense that Gerstle would say, look, the Obama presidency was huge, right? For a country that has struggled so much with racial conceptions of the nation, to have a Black president was huge, right? But that's ultimately an issue of representation, right? It's not anything Obama did, it's the fact that he's a person of color, right? But to your point, well, it's one thing to evaluate presidents based on their communications, another thing to evaluate them based on promises made, promises kept, or were the policies that they were supporting, were they ultimately good policies, ones that benefited the nation? You know, and Obama does not rank as high on those, right? If you just went off the popular rhetoric about Obama, you would think that he's top 3, top 5 presidents of all time. I think the last historians ranking of Obama put him at around 14. So he's not even in the top 10 for historians. He probably would not be in my top 10. I mean, for a couple of reasons, but I mean, I think that to work off of your comment about who made promises and didn't keep them. One of the major characteristics of what were the major kind of a president is, or a presidential candidate is, what is their vision for America in the world? Not what is their vision for America, but what is their vision for America in the world, right? And American voters go back and forth. They oscillate between visions of America in the world as America being active in the world, and visions of America in the world and America being isolationist, right? And we go through those kind of cycles. The Bush administration did not set out to necessarily be active in the world, but after 9/11, that is what happened. Right? The Bush administration began, we're going to engage here, we're going to engage here, we're going to engage here. And it went badly. Right? The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's a reason that when Bush left office in 2008, he was ranked the worst president of all time. Now, he wasn't the worst president of all time, but he was ranked the worst president of all time. Americans were. And with what they believe to be a country that's running all over the world. All of this with very little to show for it. So a key to why Obama was able to beat Hillary Clinton. I mean, Democrats are all about seniority. And it really was Hillary Clinton's turn to be president in 2008. The fact that Obama was able to beat her in the primary is huge. And it had everything to do with his was a message of disengagement. Right? Obama ran on, elect me, I'm going to end the wars, and we're going to spend money on rebuilding the country. The disengagement president, and that was the message that Americans wanted to hear. Clinton was not able to. She was not able to present that message because she's been a part of Washington, right? And she was part of Clinton. She was in Washington. She was in Congress during the Bush administration, right? And she voted for the war. She could not sell herself as a disengagement president the way Obama did. But Obama did. But did Obama bring the troops home? To your point. He said, elect me, bring the troops home. Troops didn't come home. They came home from Iraq, but then by the end of the administration, the troops had to go back to Iraq because of ISIS. In Afghanistan, the troops never left. In fact, Obama actually did his surge in Afghanistan. Actually increased the number of troops in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I think that's why people were so mad.
Yeah, like and for all of that inability to disengage from the world, the Syrian civil war is still on. However, fair, right? And it's not. Right, presidents get blamed all the time for things that are not their fault. I was just reading a New York Times piece today on, why did Biden's administration show us high marks, really positive marks? Why did they tank so quickly? Why does he remain in the low 40s now? It has everything to do with this handling of the coronavirus, particularly the coming of the Delta variant. Did Biden have, was it Biden's fault that the coronavirus mutated into the Delta variant?
I don't think he knows where he is, so.
But he was president at the time, so he takes the blame. Right? Was the inability to stop the Syrians, over 500,000 people dead, 10, 12 million Syrians displaced outside of the country. That Obama's fault? No, but he's president of the United States. When you're president of the United States, bad things happen, you take the blame. This is the way it is. Was the Rwandan genocide Bill Clinton's fault? No. But it's Bill Clinton's fault because he's president of the United States. You want to be president of the United States, bad things happen, it's your fault.
Yeah,
This is the way.
or like the Flint water crisis with Snyder's blamed for it.
Yeah, well, and it's a little deserving in Snyder's case.
Yeah, fair.
And I say that somebody who voted for Snyder twice, is a little bit his fault. But yeah, I think your overall point out. Look, you made his promises, we're gonna disengage abroad, we're gonna rebuild a home. That didn't really happen.
You could still see how throughout his presidency, like everything we talked about, that he still agreed with it happening. And like, he still didn't want him there. I just feel like there's no way that like, it may be, but was there really like a way to take them out, you know, without causing bigger problems that he would have then been blamed for even wrong. That's just like all the parts that we probably don't understand or see.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys experienced the withdrawal from Afghanistan. That was always going to be a mess. It was almost always going to end with the Taliban ended up taking back control of the country. So, just Afghanistan as it actually was, Biden took that on himself. I mean, interesting. So Obama is a disengagement president. We would think, and especially reading Grossly, you would think, man, Obama, Trump, you couldn't get two more polar opposite individuals, right? Or one representing a civic nationalism, one representing racial nationalism. And that's not necessarily untrue, that characterization. But why is it that a president wants to follow President Obama? Is it all explained through the action? To me, a lot of what explains Trump is Trump took Obama's message, right? What is it that got particularly guys who wanted manufacturing jobs in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania? What was it that so interested them in a Barack Obama? It wasn't he was man of colors, because he said, we're going to disengage abroad, we're going to rebuild a home, we're bringing the jobs back, we're bringing manufacturing back. What was Trump's message when he went?
Build the wall.
Yes, but it's also the same message of Obama. We're going to stop fighting these wars abroad. We're going to rebuild a home. Exact same messages. And Clinton, not being able to beat Obama on the disengagement message, was also not able to beat Trump on the disengagement message. Why is it that an estimated 20% of people who voted for Bernie Sanders switched to vote for Donald Trump? I mean, you would think that would be completely shocking, right? I mean, politically speaking, they're on opposite sides. The spectrum, except they aren't. They're both disengagement. We're going to stop fighting these wars abroad. And we build a country at home. The interesting thing to me about the Biden administration or the Biden candidacy is he doesn't run on this.
That's what I'm using too.
He doesn't, it's not a disengagement message, it's honestly, I think what Biden over Trump is, I think most Americans like me want a president that we don't have to think about. We don't have to care what's going on in Washington. We don't want the drama.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And Trump is a drama queen.
I was gonna say, it has more to do with Trump than Biden, right? Like,
What's that?
it has more to do with Trump than Biden. Maybe why Biden got elected.
Yeah, I mean, it had everything to do with Trump as a drama queen. It was, you know, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Like he always wanted people looking at him, even if it was for the wrong reasons. And Biden promised, hey, elect me, and you know, we're not gonna have to think about who's president. Normalcy, right? But he does that. It's the first time. It's the first time a candidate's not running on that disengagement message, and so I really wonder like what's going to happen in 24. Are we done with the disengagement message? And so in 2024, we're going to have candidates who are it's probably going to be Biden. I don't know who is going to be on the other side.
Probably DeSantis.
Miss Owens.
Might be.
It's probably not. It's probably not going to be. It's probably not going to be a Trump Republican. They're probably not going to.
Yeah.
I would imagine it might be something like Nikki. You might not know who she is. You'll be hearing her name more after 2022. Who? Yeah, exactly.
I didn't hear you.
Nikki Haley. Okay. She was ambassador to the UN.
I can see it too.
Well,
yeah.
he wants to, he's probably going to be in the primary, but it's very likely that the Trump Republicans will.
Yo, bring Ben Carson back.
Yeah.
It's very likely that.
Yes.
It's very likely that the Trump Republicans will beat the hell out of each other.
Yeah.
In the primaries, and somebody like Nikki Haley who says, I'm not getting down.
Yeah.
I'm not getting down. To the front."
Marco Rubio?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing when Trump won, there were no, well, I mean, there were a couple, I mean, there was Trump before there was Trump, Ted Cruz
Yeah.
was a Trump.
Western.
Right, but there were two, I mean, most of
Still
the
pretty dramatic.
Republicans, there were like 17 Republicans. Most of them were like, Bush type Republicans.
Everybody. Trying to be decent.
You know, they're not just more politicians, but they're multicultural.
I'm not joking.
Because we're going against that. You're going to see a lot more Trump Republicans in the 24 primary. And I don't know, I mean, you should never trust this story. But my guess would be is that you're not going to have a Trump type
What's that one guy
Republican
named Stephen Crowder?
again. Well,
I just don't see Biden getting reelected. Like, I really.
well, that's a different question. It's
Sure.
one thing to say he's going to run against, those to say that he will win the re-election. I think a lot of people are skeptical of that too.
You can
I
choose not to
think
run again.
especially,
Mhm.
I think especially if it's a Bush type Republican like Nikki Haley up against Joe Biden, that Nikki Haley wins.
Yeah.
I'm pretty convinced that our first female Our first female president is gonna be, our first female president is gonna be a Republican. I'm pretty
Well, we
sure.
already had our first female
Mhm.
for like a couple days or something.
What?
Remember? What's her name? President, because Biden was like, is that not a thing? Was that fake? The vice president was president for like. oh,
Oh, you mean Kamala?
Yeah,
Oh.
No. That never happened.
okay.
You would have to be, in order to be president of the United States, you would have to be sworn in.
Yeah, I think like it was said that she was sworn in for like a certain amount of time because Biden was like unable to work for like a certain amount of time. Sick.
That's probably just the VP role.
Are you getting this from YouTube news?
I have no idea. Maybe Jacob Arbor.
I guess.
Yeah, no, I hear these things from students.
I think it's funny.
And then I had to go do the research and I found out that like, students are getting that news from YouTube.
Sure.
Don't do that. Don't introduce with YouTube.
After class, I kind of like shut off
What's that?
desire to watching.
Yeah.
What is your? Yeah.
If you want something done, leadership lessons from Baldwin.
I'm
Candace,
pretty sure that. She
I will
says,
hop on the Candace Owens train like that. Yes. I love that.
She's a little intense.
She's a
I don't
little
know.
intense.
Yeah.
anyways, we should probably switch to talk about the final, we should probably switch over to talk about.
We don't even do a final.
So, remember the deadlines? Yes. So remember the deadlines coming up. This is your last official class. On Monday, I will have Zoom office hours from home between 12 and 2:30. So feel free to stop by. Obviously, you can send me your observations and stuff for me to look at, but I do want to give you a little bit of time to brainstorm. I guess I shouldn't have taken Ryan away from you yet. I do want to give you time to your observations for this exam. You have, remember, one comprehensive. Comprehensive means that you need to draw from material from the entire semester, not all the material from the entire semester, but take selections from each of the 3 sections of the course to create a comprehensive essay, and then 2 observations that will be just from lectures 9 through 12. So, have you begun thinking about what you're going to write about for your comprehensive or for your unit essays? Why don't you take 3 or 4 minutes, talk amongst yourselves, and we'll come back and talk together.
I haven't.
I haven't had it.
Okay, what about you, Ryan?
I haven't really thought of anything but like for the comprehensive, but I don't know. I don't really have any ideas.
Me either. Right. Good talk.
It's a Facebook post code.
Good, you should give it a like. Oh, that's a problem.
Maybe like white supremacy.
Yes.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know. I don't know.
We could do like, the effect of Coca-Cola on elections
Good.
in the last 50 years. Turns out we all have a synonymous view on the final.
What?
A synonymous view. Yeah.
And that well, you probably haven't started thinking about it.
Right.
What you're saying. It's not on our radar screen yet. So, Edwards, what can you do to help us begin to think about this final exam? Well, I think that there are some more obvious and less obvious approaches to the comprehensive essay. What would be the most obvious? What do you think would be the most obvious subject for a comprehensive essay? Boy, I would love to read an essay like that, but that is not true.
Wait, a question's not true.
What would be the most what's the most obvious subject in, like, what is a subject that was covered in a fair amount of detail in all 3 sections of the course? Sure. In a more abstract sense, somebody on Wednesday's class suggested, could we kind of write like kind of the ebb and flow of American nationalism? So like high points of American nationalism were brought that about, and like low points of American nationalism were brought that about. Sure. I mean, I think that's a little bit more abstract. I think that there's a lot more concrete subjects that you could address in some kind of way. African American history, I think, is the most obvious. It's been the most common choice in the past. Well, that's where you have to, I mean, it's one thing to establish the subjects, another to establish the observation. So what is the observation that you're going to make, right? That's a little different question. But if you think about it, all right, so we had the Jim Crow lectures in lecture 2, we had the double B lectures and the civil rights lectures 6 and lecture 8 in section 2 of the course. And then of course we had the civil rights and Black Power lectures in the 3rd section of the course. So there's a ton of very kind of straightforward, obvious material there for a comprehensive essay on Black history in some kind of way. Now, what is the argument you're going to make about it? I can't, I mean, that's where I would say you have to kind of work on your own. Feel free to run ideas by me. I think only one student has kind of run one idea by me yet. I won't share it, but I thought it was a really interesting approach that they're going to take.
Was it mine?
Huh?
Was it mine?
On Obama? Yeah. I was like, oh, that's really good. Yeah.
I'm really excited about that one.
Yeah, I think that's I thought that, I mean, at first you said it's like, wow, this is like, and that's our comprehensive essay? And then you explain what you're going to do. I'm like, oh, okay. So that makes a lot of sense.
I wanted to challenge myself and see points of view that aren't necessarily given.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that approach made a lot of sense. So, so that's one really obvious subject for a comprehensive exam. Look, and with these 2, feel free to choose a subject that you've already written about in the first exam. All right, so if you wrote about, say you decide, all right, my comprehensive essay is going to be on Black history in some kind of way. Say you wrote about Jim Crow in essay 1, feel free to cut and paste from your previous exams. Bring that information in. No need to have to completely rewrite the same material. You obviously might need to reframe it based on whatever your argument's going to be for this new essay. But a lot of like your detail and stuff, feel free to just cut and paste from those exams.
For me, like how Black history has shifted and changed as like the racial nationalism kind of.
I mean, to what extent?
Like how African Americans
Yeah.
had to like kind of shape themselves throughout.
Yeah, and I think that's a different question, right? To what extent does African American history represent African Americans having to essentially force the country to confront and overcome its racism? I think because we sometimes think that, oh, racial nationalism. Well, I mean, hopefully one of the things that Gerstle has convinced you of is that racial nationalism is not something that's like, well, we were really racist in the past, and like now we aren't racist anymore. Or like progress is linear from like more racist to least racist. It's a lot more like this, right? We go through periods where racial nationalism is high. We go through periods where racial nationalism is low. We go through periods where civic nationalism is high. We go through periods where civic nationalism go. But they're never really absent, or they never really fully go away, right? So I mean, one way, as you were talking, one way to think about this is to what extent African American history has been shaped by, or to what extent has African American history kind of led these ebbs and flows of racial nationalism in the country. I'm not exactly sure how you would approach that one. I think what you said kind of second made more sense as to, what is it that African Americans have done? Like, how have they essentially kind of organized themselves to confront and overcome racism within the United States, right? It's a question of agency, right? Because I think that what sometimes comes through intentionally or unintentionally in high school history is racism is this thing out there that just kind of went away. Or that progress in racism is just kind of a mark of the country as a whole, and we don't often think about, well, what is it exactly that brought about these things, right? So how is it that we got the desegregation of the military in 1948? Or how is it that we got the Brown decision in 1954? Or how is it that we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? Is it, well, the country just got over its racism? Or is it African American? It's the agency of African Americans. It's African Americans taking actions upon themselves, organizing themselves specifically to end these practices, to bring about these legislative victories. So that is one, so that is one question, or that is one approach, or one observation is, the extent to which Black Americans have not waited for racism to end, but have directly challenged racism, and racism has certainly decreased from previous generations because African Americans directly confronted it.
Yeah, that was really good in the Birmingham jail letter, how he was saying like oppressors aren't just suddenly going to stop oppressing. Like you need to fight it.
Oppressed people will not remain oppressed forever, right? As a line out of that.
Yeah.
Because that does run up to the present, right? I mean, it's very common for people today to feel about protest movements, whatever they are, to feel like, what are you so upset about? Like, it's like, do you not understand what produces social, cultural, legal change in the United States? It's organized protest. That's how these things are overcome.
I
Right.
thought, without naming any names, at the concert, they did a song that was written during the Civil War, and the bio in the program was like, with a nation divided today almost nearly as bad as this period, Abraham Lincoln, like, I was like, ooh, like, it was basically saying, like, since we're in a time kind of the Civil War. I don't know, it just seemed kind of extreme. Or do you think it's comparable?
Oh, I think it's very comparable.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just, it's political polarization, right?
Yeah, I
it
don't know. I
just-
guess it just seems like that was a little more extreme than now. Really?
If we're gonna claim that we have it as bad as the Civil War, I mean, with language.
Yeah, like that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the polarization was manifesting, or just because of the regional natures of these things, the polarization was manifesting itself in much more dramatic ways, right? I mean, it's, we don't have outright civil war in Kansas today
Right.
in a way that there was outright civil war in Kansas in 1855. Right? So yeah, it's we're a lot more interconnected today than we were back then. So yeah, but in terms of if the idea is just that, well, we don't really trust each other as Americans today. Well, that's about as bad as it was.
Really?
That's about as bad.
Is there a place in the world where like the nation trusts its, neighbor really well?
Is it what?
Is there ever a time where a nation trusts its neighbor really well?
Trusts its neighbor?
Yeah, like you say, like, we don't trust Americans. Like, when has anyone ever trusted their fellow citizen of that nation? Like, I don't think that will ever happen, or, I guess I'm confused by that statement.
Well, we've definitely gone through times where we've tried to work hard to get along with each other. I would say certainly the 1950s was a time of very strong sense of trying to get
Except
along
for
with
the
each other,
minorities.
but that
Also,
wasn't.
like,
But that was born of fear of being considered to be communist if you didn't do
I think there was
that.
also a time of like great hate and like,
Yeah.
of that. Like, I think of those times of most togetherness, there was also probably times of most division, just like people were just outright like, I don't know, the Ku Klux Klan was just like very loud during that time, right? Like, or maybe I'm wrong, but
Not so much in the 1950s.
okay.
I mean, there were other groups. I mean, there were much more respectable daylight white supremacist groups.
So we were more unified in 1950 than 2022.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but what was that unity based upon? It was based
Right.
upon the subordination of women and people of color.
Right.
Well, I
We should
mean,
bring it back.
So I don't know, that seems contradictory to me, because I don't agree with that. Like,
so you think that that was not really unification?
Right.
sure, like, I can,
Well, I think that's fair, right? What we were talking about the honors class last night is, I mean, really since the 1970s, we've really been trying to, as a country, see if it's possible to build a sense of nationalism on a multicultural foundation. Is it possible to build a sense of being American around a country which is structured into like these different identity communities?
Yeah, we're getting more and more.
Whether it's Italian, Jewish, Black, female, LGBTQ, Christian or white Christian specifically, right? I mean, all these fracturing is it possible to build a sense of national unity given this fractured political landscape. We're still gonna be trying to figure that out in your lifetime. But anyways, getting back to final exam. So one option is writing something on African American history. Another one that students have taken up before, women's history. U.S. foreign policy is another one that's been taken up. Anything was covered fairly explicitly in all three sections of the course is, are things that can be taken up for a comprehensive essay. Feel free to experiment beyond that, but those have been the three most common subjects for comprehensive essays: women's history, Black history, and the history of U.S. foreign policy. I mean, just be aware of, like, for women's history, there's not that much in the first section of the course. For U.S. foreign policies, there's not that much in the third section of the course. So you want to make sure that the sections where it is covered pretty in depth, that you hit those pretty hard.
So for comprehensive, we just have to think, it's not from each lecture, it's just from like each part.
Not from each lecture, it's from each part. So,
And
yeah.
then what are the good ideas for the two regular?
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to kind of get back in track and make sure we had some ideas. There's a lot of material in lecture 9 through 12, right? A lot of persons, a lot of groups, the longest lectures. of the course. But understand how they fit together, right? Lectures 9 and 10 are about liberals. Lectures 11 and 12 are about conservatives. So if you're thinking about, all right, so what would be my two subjects for the two other observations? Well, why don't you do one on liberals and one on conservatives? Now, that's one way to think about it. Sometimes students figure out ways to intersect all of those lectures, right? If you're going to take up a particular theme. So, you know, some students have written on the idea of authenticity. Authenticity is not something that is obviously authenticity is something that's rooted in the liberal lectures, right? I talked a lot about authenticity as it related to the New Left and to the civil rights movement, but certainly the Black Power movement, certainly women's liberation, both fit as kind of authenticity movements. But in some ways, so do the conservative lectures as well too, right? The conservative, I mean, to the extent that authenticity is about achieving a sense of individual identity or individual integrity within a society based on mass conformity. Well, the new conservatives are all about individuals, right? I mean, Goldwater, Buckley Jr., Reagan, all the way up to a Trump, they're all about individualism, aren't they? And if you want to talk about authenticity in politics, I mean, why did so many people, the question is not why did so many people vote for Donald Trump, but why do so many people say they voted for Donald Trump? What does people like about Donald Trump?
It stands up against what they don't like, the way the government, he like calls me out.
He says it like it is,
Yeah.
right? He's a straight talker. He says it like it is, right? Right? In other words, Donald Trump's appeal is an authenticity appeal. He's not a politician. He says it like it is. And the irony is that Joe Biden is actually the straight talker politician. I mean, Joe Biden was known as come on, man. I mean, he was known as that guy since the 1970s, and it's funny how Trump really kind of pushed Biden aside as the straight talker guy. It was so funny in 2020 to have an election of these two. Says it like it is, because both of these guys says it like it is.
Their last debate was
Well, the first one was the one that was just completely insane.
Is that oh yeah, you're right. The one where it's like this clown.
That was the one where like
me and Josie had a bunch of popcorn and we're like, it was so
that was the one where I think most Americans were like, I don't know if I want to be in this country.
It was.
Like it
so
was
bad.
like two middle school boys fighting over who was gonna ask to go home.
It was so embarrassing. It's like, really? These guys want to be leaders of the free world? So scary. But yeah, in terms of what, so I think within those, there's ways of cutting across lectures 9, 10, 11, and 12. But I think you're on pretty safe ground to just, stick within those connections, right? So lectures 9 and 10 are both about what I call the radical liberal movements. Authenticity is one approach to go about trying to develop some kind of thesis about them, but there's other ways. Look, with all of these things, once you identify a subject, an easy way to start thinking about turning a subject into an observation is to ask the evaluation question, right? This is what many of you did for your corporations essay in the first test. You say, all right, I want to write about corporations. What's my observation going to be? Were corporations good or bad for America? your answer to that question was your observation. You can do the same. I mean, a good place to start with both radical liberals and with the new conservatives or the new right is to ask the evaluation question. Right? Did this new conservative or new right movement running from Buckley Jr. to Goldwater, Reagan, and Trump, has this movement been good or bad for him? These radical liberal movements that developed in the 1960s and 1970s, has their effect been good or bad for the country? Right? That's a great way to start turning your subject into a doable observation. Okay, is ask the evaluation question to help get you thinking about those.
Yeah, I think that since it's like 9 and 10 are like about liberal, and like it'll be easier to like pick a thesis based off that, like re-listen.
I think so. I think that's the most.
And then
the
like
most-
say like in 9 and 10 liberals were more about authenticity in politics, and then
Yeah, but again, I mean, just saying that, like, okay, so, yeah, the liberal movements of the 60s and 70s pursued a sense of authenticity. I mean, I think I would say you're kind of halfway there. I mean, I think what makes it more interesting is these movements all kind of centered around the desire for individual authenticity. I think answering the was that good or bad question really kind of gets you the full way there, right? These movements established authenticity as their goal, and this was good for the country, or this was bad for the country. Gets you all the way there. Yeah, we're out of time. So feel free to send me observations as you get them drafted over the weekend, and send me questions. Feel free to stop by office hours on Monday, but otherwise we're done here.
are you taking rough drafts
Sure.
at all? When will that stop?
Probably Thursday, maybe. Yeah, somewhere around there. Hey, Ryan.